I still remember the day the acceptance letter was supposed to come. It was a warm June afternoon, the kind where you could hear lawnmowers buzzing and sprinklers clicking like clockwork across the neighborhood. I sat on the porch, sweating in my old denim shorts, clutching a lukewarm glass of lemonade and praying. I'd been checking the mailbox every day for a week. I applied late, barely made the deadline, but I knew my essay was strong. I'd poured my heart into it, and my SAT score had gone up after 2 retakes. I believed it was enough. More than that, I needed it to be. College was my shot, my way out. Out of this tight, judgmental little town in Indiana. Out of my parents' endless fight. Out of being treated like the invisible middle child between my golden older brother Ryan and my miracle baby sister, Ellie. I didn't want to be better than them. I just wanted to be seen. But that day, like the 6 before it, the mailbox was empty. Or so I thought. Later that evening, I heard them whispering in the kitchen. I was coming down the stairs for water when I heard my mom say, "Well, she's not getting in anyway. That school's too good for her." My dad grunted. "Even if she did, we don't have the money. And we're not taking out another loan." I froze. My heart slammed against my chest. "You didn't tell her it came?" Mom asked. Dad didn't answer right away. Then he muttered, "No, it's not like it said she got in." I stayed hidden behind the wall, not because I was trying to eavesdrop, but because something inside me knew they were lying. I finally asked the next morning, "Hey, did anything come in the mail for me? From Emerson College?" My mom looked at me over her coffee mug like I'd just asked if I could fly to the moon. "Nothing came," she said flatly. "But are you sure?" "Because it should have." I said nothing came. That was it. End of discussion. Her tone dared me to ask again, so I didn't. But I couldn't shake the feeling. I called Emerson's admissions office from my school counselor's phone later that week. Mrs. Langley let me use it during lunch. She was the only adult who ever treated me like I had a real future. "Hi," I said nervously into the phone. "My name is Lila Morgan. I applied to the fall class. I'm just calling to check if my decision letter was sent out." There was typing on the other end. Then the woman said brightly, "Yes, you were accepted. It looks like the letter was mailed on June 10th. My stomach dropped. "Accepted?" "Yes. Congratulations." "Did you not receive it?" I lied. "Oh, I must have missed it. But thank you. Thank you so much." That night I confronted my mom. I waited until dinner not because it was dramatic, but because that was the only time she and my dad were both home. I set down my fork, looked her straight in the eyes, and said, "Emerson accepted me." Her hand froze midair with a forkful of mashed potatoes. Dad didn't even blink. "I called them," I continued. "They said the letter was sent June 10th. She set her fork down. "So you went behind our backs to call?" "You went behind mine by hiding it." "I didn't hide anything," she snapped. "We never saw any letter." "Then how did you know it was from Emerson?" Silence. Ryan chuckled. "Wow, drama queen." Ellie looked between us like it was a soap opera. "You can't afford it anyway," Dad said finally. "Be realistic." "I got a scholarship," I said, voice shaking. "They're offering aid. I just need a little help with the rest." "And what happens when that scholarship runs out? Or you flunk out after a semester?" "I won't," Dad scoffed. "You get 1B and you fall apart. That's not college material." My heart burned. Not with sadness, but rage. I wasn't perfect, but I worked hard. I stayed up late studying while Ryan went out drinking. I helped with Ellie's homework when Mom couldn't deal, and I still managed to get into a top liberal arts college. But none of that mattered to them. "You're not going," Dad said. "Stand." And just like that, dinner was over. The next few weeks were a blur. I begged, pleaded, brought home every form, every breakdown of financial aid. My mom always found a reason to say no. My dad always said I was being ungrateful. And the worst part? They started telling people I had dropped out of school completely. At church, I overheard my mom saying to one of her friends, "College just wasn't the right fit for Lila. She's taking some time to figure things out." I wasn't even out of high school yet. It was like they were erasing my future before I could live it. So I made a decision. If they weren't going to support me, I'd do it on my own. I applied for late housing. I picked up a second job at the local diner. I told Miss Langley everything, and she pulled strings to help me submit paperwork just in time to lock in my scholarship. I used a post office box for all school correspondence, so my parents couldn't intercept it again. I didn't tell them I was leaving. Not until the morning I packed my bag. Ryan laughed when he saw my duffel. "What is this, a teenage runaway movie?" "Something like that," I said, slinging the strap over my shoulder. Mom didn't come out of her room. Dad just shook his head and muttered, "Ungrateful." I looked at him and said, "You'll regret this someday." He didn't even flinch. But Ellie, she hugged me at the door. She whispered, "I believe you." I cried all the way to the bus station. College wasn't easy, not by a long shot. I worked 3 jobs. I missed out on party. I couldn't afford books half the time, and had to borrow old editions from the library. But I made it. Semester after semester, dean's list every time. And the day I stood on that stage in my cap and gown, looking out at all the proud families cheering for their kids, I didn't feel sad mine wasn't there. I felt free. I kept the diploma rolled up in its tube for a year. I didn't post about it, didn't send photos home, didn't brag. I just lived until the day of the family BBQ. Ryan was getting married. Ellie had just finished high school. My parents sent a group text, yes, even to me, inviting everyone to celebrate our beautiful family. I almost didn't go, but then I remembered that promise I made. "You'll regret this someday." And I figured it was time they saw what they tried to bury. Time they saw me. Not invisible, not broken, not dropped out, but graduated. The day of the family BBQ started bright and hot. Summer in Indiana always hit like a wave. Humid, sticky, and loud with cicadas. My old neighborhood looked the same, but I felt like a stranger pulling up in the rental car I could finally afford. I hadn't been home in 4 years, not since I boarded that bus for college with $50 and a backpack. Now, I was pulling into my parents' driveway, diploma tucked into a sleek folder in the passenger seat, and a calm, steady rage building inside me. I was no longer the desperate girl begging for help. I was someone else now, someone who survived without them, someone they wouldn't recognize. Ryan's voice rang out before I even reached the porch. "Look who it is. Lila the dropout returns." I smiled coolly. Not quite. He hugged me anyway, smelling like beer and barbecue smoke. His wife, Kayla, waved from a lawn chair in the backyard. They had 2 kids now. I didn't even know their names. Ellie came out next. She looked older, taller, more confident, but her eyes still lit up when she saw me. She hugged me so tightly I almost dropped the folder. "You came," she whispered. "I had to." "Are you she began, then saw the envelope in my hand. "Oh, yeah," I said. Today's the day. The backyard was packed. Aunts, uncles, cousins, neighbors, everyone who had heard the story by now. The one where I dropped out because school was too hard, where I needed space to figure myself out. The lie my parents had told again and again until it became their truth. My mom spotted me from across the yard. Her smile flickered. My dad raised a beer in greeting, like nothing had ever happened. "Lila," he said, "glad you could join us." I stepped closer, heart racing. "You look surprised." "Why would I be?" He looked at my clothes, my car keys, my watch. "Looks like you're doing fine. You didn't need college after all." That was his story now. Before I could answer, my mom joined us. "We're so glad you're home. It's been too long. You could have called," I said. She blinked, caught off guard. "You had my number," I said, "just like you had that letter." The air around us stiffened. I didn't wait for their response. I turned and stepped onto the deck, climbing up onto the small bench by the patio door. The whole yard could see me now. "Can I have everyone's attention?" I said, voice calm but loud enough to cut over the music. Conversations paused. A few heads turned. Ellie froze beside me. I held up the folder. 4 years ago, I got into Emerson College on a scholarship. But some people, my parents hid my acceptance letter. Gasps rippled through the crowd. My mom's hand shot to her mouth. My dad told everyone I dropped out, that I wasn't strong enough for school. But the truth is, they just didn't want to support me. They lied. Repeatedly. My dad's face turned red. That's not what happened. It is, I said firmly. I had to work 3 jobs just to make it. I lived on cereal and borrowed textbooks. But I graduated. With honors. I held up the diploma, letting the gold seal catch the sun. And now, you don't get to rewrite the story anymore. There was silence. Deep, thick silence. Then someone clapped. I looked down to see Ellie, smiling with tears in her eyes. Then more hands joined. One aunt, a cousin, even Kayla. The applause wasn't loud, but it was real. And my parents? They just stood there stunned. They'd lost control of the narrative, and they knew it. After that, things changed. Not quickly, not easily, but they changed. Ryan didn't joke about me being a dropout anymore. In fact, he avoided me altogether. My parents didn't try to defend themselves. They just looked small. The golden daughter they tried to bury had come back shining, and people saw it. After the BBQ, Ellie and I sat on the porch swing while everyone else cleaned up. "You really did it," she whispered. I nodded. "And now it's your turn." She looked up at me. "What do you mean?" "I mean, whatever you want to do next, don't let them stop you." She looked down at her hands. "They say I should go to nursing school. But do you want to?" She hesitated. "You don't owe them anything, Elle," I said softly. "You never did." A week later, she texted me a picture of her application to an art school in Chicago, her secret dream. I cried when I saw it, because I remembered what it felt like to believe you had no right to dream. And now, she knew better. I left that town, a final time, feeling lighter. I didn't come back to be forgiven or welcomed. I came back to be seen, to show them I survived without their help, to remind them that the truth always finds daylight, even if it takes years. I moved back to Boston the next morning, back to the little apartment I shared with 2 roommates and a leaky bathroom ceiling. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. I'd earned it. I'd paid for every square foot with late nights, blisters, and pride. After that family BBQ, something shifted in me. I didn't feel like a failure anymore. I didn't feel like the invisible daughter. I felt like someone who had dragged herself out of the dirt, wiped her face, and said, "Watch me." But just because I had changed, didn't mean the past was gone. No, the past had only started unraveling. It began a week after I returned. I got a message from Mrs. Langley, my old high school counselor. She wrote, "Lila, I just saw your college graduation post. I'm so proud of you, but I need to tell you something. Something about the letter from Emerson." My stomach dropped. I called her that night. Her voice was calm, but I could tell she'd been holding it in for years. "When your acceptance letter didn't show up, I had a bad feeling," she said. "So I called Emerson myself." I blinked. "You did?" she sighed. "They confirmed it had been mailed. So I called your mom, asked if it had arrived. She said she'd check the mail again." I sat down. "And?" She called back 2 days later and said nothing came. I believed her, Lila. But now, I think she lied to me too. My throat tightened. I wanted to scream, but all I could say was, "She did." Mrs. Langley lowered her voice. "You know, she came into my office that same week. Asked if there was any way to cancel your application. Said something about family issues." I froze. "She what?" I told her I couldn't do that, even if I wanted to. "I'm so sorry. I should have told you back then, but..." "No," I said, my voice shaking. "Thank you for telling me now." We hung up, and I sat in silence for a long time. My mother hadn't just hidden my future. She had tried to erase it. That night, I pulled out the folder with my diploma again. I had already proved her wrong. Proved them all wrong. But suddenly, it didn't feel like enough. They weren't just cruel, they were calculating. It wasn't laziness. It was sabotage, and it was time to go deeper. The next morning, I called Emerson's admissions office again. I spoke to a man named Jacob, friendly voice, full of "let me check on that for you" energy. I asked for a copy of the original letter they sent me back in June 4 years ago. He found it. "I can mail you a reprint," he offered. "Actually," I said, "can you tell me what address it was sent to?" There was typing on the other end. Then, "Sure. It went to 714 Cedar Grove Lane, Franklin, Indiana." I closed my eyes. That was my house, my parents' house. No mistake, no mailing error. They'd had it the whole time. I thanked Jacob and hung up. I sat in the tiny kitchen, staring at the wall. That letter had changed my life, and they had tried to keep it from me, and then lied, and then spread those lies to everyone, to teachers, to relatives, to neighbors. They rewrote my story so that they didn't look back. Because if I'd made it, then people would have asked, "Why didn't you support her?" They'd rather paint me as unstable than admit they were selfish. I opened my laptop. I started writing. The first draft of the article was messy. It started as a letter, then a journal entry, then a story. But after 2 hours, I had a title. "They told everyone I dropped out, but the truth is, they stole my college acceptance letter." I posted it anonymously on Medium. No names, no locations, just the story. It blew up within 48 hours. I woke up to hundreds of comments, dozens of emails. People sharing their own stories about hidden letters, stolen scholarships, family jealousy, manipulation. I wasn't alone. Somewhere in Texas, a girl's aunt had shredded her nursing acceptance letter. In Ohio, a guy said his parents forged his rejection just so he wouldn't move out. My story was painful, yes, but it was universal. That's when I got the email. A journalist from a student-led outlet reached out. They wanted to interview me, if I was ready. Her name was Serena. She was a recent Columbia grad, sharp as a knife, but gentle in her tone. We met over Zoom. She asked careful questions. I told her the truth. This time, with my name. "I don't want revenge," I told her, "but I want the truth out there. I want other kids to know they're not crazy, that their dreams do matter. Even if their family doesn't support them." She nodded. "We'll keep your story accurate, honest." And they did. When the article went live 2 weeks later, the title was powerful. "The College Letter My Parents Hid: How One Woman Fought for Her Future Against Her Own Family." It went viral, this time, with my face on it. The messages poured in again. Some people were shocked, others outraged. A few accused me of making it up until I posted a picture of the letter and my diploma side by side. One girl messaged me, "I almost gave up on applying to art school, but then I read your piece, and I hit submit." Another boy said, "I'm in the foster system. I thought I didn't deserve to dream. Thank you for making me believe I do." That's when I realized this wasn't about just my story anymore. This was bigger. I got a call from Ellie the day after the article dropped. Her voice was shaky. "Lila, you wrote the article." "Yeah, everyone's talking about it." "I know." There was silence. "I'm proud of you," she said finally. Then softer, "I think I want to tell my story too." My throat closed up. "You don't have to," I whispered. "I know, but maybe it's time someone else knew what it was like in that house." I looked out the window. Rain had started falling lightly on the glass. "I'm here for you," I said, "whenever you're ready." And I meant it. A week later, I got another call, from my mom, unknown number. I nearly didn't answer. "Lila," she said, the moment I picked up, "why are you doing this?" I stayed silent. "You're making us look like monsters." I still didn't speak. "You don't understand how hard it was," she said. "We were struggling. We had to make hard choices." "You made a choice to lie," I said, "to sabotage me, to make me feel worthless. We did what we thought was best." "No," I said, "you did what was best for you." She started to cry. I hung up. The truth is, I didn't need her apology. It wouldn't change anything, because for once, I had control of the narrative. They couldn't silence me anymore. They couldn't erase me. The weeks after my article went viral were a blur. Emails, interviews, podcasts. I even got a message from someone on the Emerson Alumni Board who said, "We're proud to call you one of ours." But what meant the most? A letter. Handwritten. From a high school senior named Haley, in Kentucky. It read, "I printed out your article and taped it above my desk. I read it every morning before I start my college essays. You made me feel like it's okay to try, even when no one else believes in you." I sat with that letter in my lap, tears falling onto the paper, because for the first time in my life, I realized something. The worst thing my parents ever did to me had become the best thing I could give to someone else. Hope. Ellie called me again, but this time, she wasn't crying. "Guess what?" she said. "What?" "I got accepted into Columbia," I gasped. "You applied?" She laughed. "6 months ago. Didn't tell anyone. I didn't want their negativity poisoning it." Oh my God. Ellie. I deferred for a semester, just wanted to make sure it was real before I told anyone. "Does Mom know?" She went quiet. "Not yet," she said. "But I'm going to tell her soon." "You're brave," I said. "No," she replied. "You were brave first." Later that week, I got invited to speak at a youth empowerment summit in New York, all expenses paid. They asked me to share my story, not just about college, but about being silenced and rising anyway. I almost said no. I didn't think I was inspirational enough. But then, I remembered how it felt when no one believed in me. When I was working doubles, eating canned soup and crying alone in the library bathroom, that girl deserved to be heard. So I said yes. The night before the event, I stood in my hotel room, staring at the speech I wrote. I didn't want it to sound perfect. I wanted it to sound real. I folded the speech into my bag and looked at myself in the mirror. Same eyes, same freckle, same brown ponytail. But I wasn't the same girl who had once begged her mother to check the mailbox. I was a woman who made her own way, even when the door was slammed shut. The conference hall was packed. Teenagers, parents, teachers. When they called my name, my palms were sweaty, my heart raced. But I walked on stage, took a breath, and told the truth. I was 18 when I got accepted into my dream school. I began, but I never saw the letter because my parents hid it from me. There were gasps, murmurs, but I didn't give up. I found another way, and 4 years later, I graduated. I didn't drop out, I was pushed out, and I came back anyway. I looked at the crowd. Their eyes were wide. Some were teary. I kept going. And now I want to say this to anyone who's ever been told they're not good enough. Anyone who's been lied to, held back, or silenced. I smiled. Your story isn't over. And they don't get to write the ending. After I stepped down, a line formed. Dozens of kids. Some older, some younger. Each of them wanted to say thank you, or hug me, or just tell me their truth. A boy whispered, "My coach says I'm wasting my time applying to college, but I'm going to do it anyway now." A girl said, "My mom told me I wasn't smart enough for science, but I just got into pre-med." Another student, barely 16, told me she planned to run away, but now, she said, "Maybe I'll run towards something instead." I left that conference with a full heart, and a heavy one, because I knew how many stories like mine still hadn't been told. The next surprise came from Emerson. I got a letter in the mail. Official. I opened it with shaking hands. Inside was a personal note from the Dean of Admissions. It said, "We apologize for what you endured. No student should have to fight that hard just to receive what they've already earned. We would be honored to feature your story at our alumni celebration next spring." And below that, an invitation to join the Emerson Mentorship Program to help students from underserved or unsupportive families navigate the college process. I stared at the letter for a long time, then I cried, because I wasn't just healing from my past anymore. I was changing the future. That night, I called my dad. I don't know why. Maybe part of me still hoped for an apology, or maybe I just wanted to face the last ghost. He picked up after 2 rings. "Lila." His voice was clipped, cold. "I got a letter from Emerson." I said, "They want me to speak at their celebration." Silence. "I also joined a mentorship program," I added. To help kids who don't have family support. More silence. Then he said, "That's good. Just that. No emotion, no ownership." I should have hung up. But instead, I said, "Why did you hide the letter?" He sighed. "We thought you'd fail." I blinked. We didn't want to waste money on someone who couldn't finish. I felt like the wind had been knocked out of me. "You didn't even let me try," I whispered. "You always had your head in the clouds, Lila," he said. "We were just trying to be realistic." I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. "Thanks for being honest," I said, and hung up. And that was the last time I spoke to him. The final piece came a month later. Ellie moved out. She packed her bags, her paints, and her books. She called me from her dorm in New York and said, "I'm finally free." I smiled. "You sound like it." Then she said something I'll never forget. "Thank you for getting out first." I didn't set out to be an example. I just wanted to survive. But somewhere along the way, surviving turned into shining. And shining turned into helping others glow, too. They told everyone I dropped out. But I didn't. I rose. And now they can't ignore me anymore. Fall came fast that year. The air was sharp, the trees golden and fading. I was back in Boston, walking across the Emerson campus, but this time not as a student. This time, I was walking in through the front doors of the admissions office, invited, not ignored. I had been asked to speak at the Emerson Alumni Storyteller Series, a panel event, followed by a Q&A, and I had no idea how many people would come, or what they expected of me. All I knew was that this time, no one was going to silence my voice. Before the event, they gave me a name badge. Lila Monroe, class of 20. That alone made me tear up. For 4 years I never felt like I belonged on campus. I had been the invisible girl. No dorm, no parents on move-in day, no money for textbooks. I was the one who worked in the mailroom to pay for ramen. But now I was standing in front of freshmen who wanted to take selfies with me, who had read my article and whispered, "You made me believe I could do this." My voice was shaking when I stepped onto the stage. The crowd was packed. Students, faculty, even reporters from the student press. But when I started speaking, something clicked. I didn't drop out. I was pushed out, I said, by the very people who were supposed to believe in me. The room went still. I spoke about finding my acceptance letter in a drawer, about overhearing my parents lie at the grocery store, about eating peanut butter sandwiches 5 nights a week, and studying by the light of vending machines when I couldn't afford electricity. I told them everything, and when I was done, the applause didn't just sound polite, it sounded like justice. After the event, a woman approached me. She was in her 50s, wearing a tailored gray coat and heels that clicked like punctuation marks across the floor. "You're Lila Monroe," she said. I nodded, unsure. "I'm Sarah Feldman, Board of Trustees." "Oh wow, nice to meet you," I said quickly, nervous. She gave me a small smile. "You've caused quite a stir, in the best way. I hope that's a good thing." She laughed. "It's a very good thing. We've had a spike in applicants who mention your article, and we're launching a scholarship in your name for students who apply without parental support." I blinked. "A scholarship? Full ride," she said. "Room and board too. We call it the Monroe Resilience Fund." I stood there, frozen, tears pooling in my eyes. "I don't know what to say," I whispered. She leaned in. "Say yes, and keep going." Later that night, back in my tiny Boston apartment, I sat by the window, watching the lights of the city. Ellie called. She had moved into her dorm in New York a week earlier, and she sounded brighter than I'd ever heard her. "They put me in a single," she said, "and I've already joined the campus paper." "Ellie, that's amazing. You paved the way," she said quietly. "I just had to walk through." And then she added, "Guess who texted me today?" I frowned. "Who?" "Mom." I froze. "She said she misses me, and she hopes I'll come home for Thanksgiving." I swallowed hard. "Are you going?" Ellie was quiet. "I don't think so. Not this year." "Good," I said gently. "You don't owe them anything." Thanksgiving came quickly. I didn't go home either. Instead, I volunteered at a shelter in Cambridge that fed low-income students and family. I spent the day serving mashed potatoes and cranberry sauce, laughing with strangers who felt more like family than anyone I shared DNA with. And after dinner, I gave a short speech about being thankful, not for what you're given, but for what you fight for. I told them the truth again, not the pretty version, but the real one. 2 weeks later, I got a message on LinkedIn from someone I hadn't heard from in a long time. Ryan, my older brother, the same brother who used to joke about me dropping out. His message said, "Hey, I just wanted to say, I read your article, and I didn't know the whole story. I'm sorry for believing them, for not asking you." I stared at the screen, shocked. Then he sent another message. "Do you want to grab coffee sometime? Just the two of us?" I didn't respond right away. I wasn't sure what I wanted, but for the first time, it wasn't because I was scared. It was because I finally had the power to choose. When I finally agreed to meet, we picked a quiet coffee shop near his office. He looked older, thinner, more tired, but he smiled when he saw me. "Wow," he said. "You look like someone important." I laughed. "I am someone important." "Yeah," he said softly. "You are." We talked for 2 hours. He told me about the fights he had with our parents after my story came out, how they still insisted they were protecting me, how they accused him of taking sides. I told them the only side I was on was the truth, he said, and I was tired of pretending. I sipped my coffee. "Why now?" He shrugged. "Because I finally realized what I was doing. I went along with the lie. I laughed at the joke. I never asked if you were okay. You didn't have to believe them," I said quietly. "But you did, I know," he said, "and I'll regret that for the rest of my life." We sat there in silence. Then he added, "If you ever want me in your life again, I'll earn it. I won't expect it." I nodded slowly. "That's fair. Because forgiveness isn't about letting people off the hook. It's about deciding what you need to move forward." As winter came, I started getting calls from colleges across the country. They wanted me to speak, mentor, lead workshop. Suddenly, my voice, the one they tried to silence, was in demand. And not just for speeches. Publishers started reaching out. "Have you ever thought of writing a memoir?" one asked. Another said, "Your story is powerful. It's not just about school. It's about betrayal, resilience, and rewriting your own ending." And for the first time, I realized maybe this was only the beginning. I sat down that night with a fresh notebook and wrote the first line of what would become my book. I didn't drop out. I was erased, but I came back in ink, because no one gets to hold the pen but me now. Not my parents, not the neighbors, not even time, just me. The first time my mom called me after the story went viral, I let it go to voicemail. She didn't leave a message. The second time, she sent a text. "We need to talk." I stared at those 4 words for a long time. We? Like we were in this together. Like this wasn't something they did. I didn't respond. 3 days later, she sent another. "Please. You've embarrassed us enough." That one made me laugh out loud. Embarrassed them. The people who stole my future, lied to our entire family, and then watched me suffer in silence. They were embarrassed? I took a screenshot, saved it. Then I blocked her number. But it didn't stop. She tried emailing me next. Subject line: "You owe us a conversation." Her message was short. "Lila, what you did was cruel. You humiliated us. You've always been sensitive, but this is too far. You know we had your best interests at heart. If you ever want to be part of this family again, you need to apologize." "Mom?" I didn't reply. Instead, I forwarded it to Ellie. She read it and replied immediately. I got the same email, word for word. We stared at our screens in disbelief. Best interests at heart. What part of hiding my college acceptance was best for me? Maybe in her mind, controlling me was love. But I knew better now. Love isn't silence. Love isn't shame. Love doesn't come with conditions. The turning point came a week later. I was invited to be a guest on a national podcast called Unwritten Futures. They wanted to talk about parental sabotage and family betrayal. I hesitated at first. It felt big. too public, but something in me knew this wasn't just my story anymore, so I agreed. The host was named Jordan, calm, warm, a woman who had clearly interviewed 1,000 people before me, but she listened like I was the only one. We recorded in a studio in downtown Boston. The lights were dim, the mics professional, and the air quiet except for the sound of my voice. I told everything, again, but this time, slower, deeper, from a place of healing, not just her. Jordan leaned in at one point and asked, "Do you think your parents ever loved you?" It hit me like a punch. I didn't speak for a long moment. Then I said, "I think they loved the version of me they could control, but I don't think they ever really saw me." The room was still. That line made it into the podcast trailer. It went viral. Suddenly, I was being quoted in articles. People stitched it on TikTok. One creator said, "That sentence broke me." Emails started pouring in from strangers. My dad did the same thing. Hid my college acceptance. My mom told people I flunked out. I didn't. I just couldn't afford to stay. Thank you for speaking what I couldn't. It was overwhelming, beautiful, and heartbreaking. So many of us had lived in silence. Now, the silence was broken. One day, while sorting through emails, I got one from a woman named Marlene. Subject line: "You don't know me, but I know you." I opened it cautiously. "Hi, Lila. I'm a family friend. I used to work with your dad at the county office years ago. I recently saw your podcast clip. I need you to know something. Your parents told people you were mentally unstable, that you were too fragile for college, that you ran away and refused help. I never believed it. But others did. I'm sorry I stayed quiet. Marlene." I sat there stunned. They hadn't just lied about me to family. They told the entire community that I was crazy, and people believed it. No wonder I got weird looks at church that one time I visited. No wonder no one ever called to check on me. I wasn't just erased. I was replaced by a version of me they invented. And suddenly, I knew what I had to do next. I called Ellie. "I'm going back," I said. "Back where?" she asked. "To the town, to the community center. They're doing a local leadership panel next month. I just got invited to speak." She was quiet. "You're sure?" "No, but I need to." "Then I'll be there." The community center hadn't changed. Same old blue trim on the windows, same creaky stairs, same dusty smell. But this time, I wasn't the kid hiding in the back row. I was the keynote speaker. I stepped up to the podium, my heels echoing against the wood. The room was half full. I spotted a few familiar faces. A few people whispered as I passed. I began slowly. "My name is Lila Monroe. I grew up right here in this town." Pause. "I'm the daughter of people you probably know. You probably heard stories about me over the years." A few heads nodded. "Well, I'm here to tell you mine," and I did. For 20 straight minutes. No interruptions. No apologies. Just truth. When I finished, the room was silent. Then, applause. Not everyone clapped. Some people stayed frozen, but some stood. And in the very back row, I saw a man slowly get to his feet. Ryan. My brother. He gave me a small nod, and for the first time, I believed it. After the event, a woman approached me, tears in her eyes. "You don't know me," she said, "but I have a daughter, and I was wrong about you. I'm sorry." She pressed a folded piece of paper into my hand. "In case your mother never says it." I opened it when I got home. Inside was a handwritten quote: "When someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time." Maya Angelou. That night, for the first time in my life, I didn't cry because of them. I cried because I was free. Free from their version of me. Free from the shame. Free to be. I had been labeled the dropout, the failure, the fragile one. But now I was none of those things. I was the one who survived, and the one who spoke. And for the first time ever, they couldn't take that away. It was late October when the local university invited me back, this time not as a student, but as a keynote speaker for their annual Voices of Resilience event. The email from the dean said I'd inspired hundreds of incoming students, and they wanted me to share my story in person. When I walked through those familiar glass doors, I had a flashback of myself, years ago, sitting in that lobby with shaking hands, wondering how I would afford even one semester. I remember the sting of shame when I told the financial aid officer my parents said I'm not going to college, and now I was here, standing in the auditorium lobby, wearing a tailored navy dress, holding my own book in hand. Yes, my book. I had spent the last year writing it, not just my story, but the stories of dozens of other kids who were sabotaged, silenced, or stolen from by the very people who were supposed to love them. And when it hit shelves, it exploded. The day it launched, I got a call from a journalist at the New York Times. "Your story's powerful, Lila," she said. "But your voice? That's something we don't see every day." The interview went live the next morning. Within a week, I had offers from 2 major publishing houses for a follow-up. By week 2, I had a verified blue check next to my name, and a line of DMs from producers. People wanted my story on TV, a docuseries, even a film. But I wasn't chasing fame. I had one goal left: justice, not in court, not with lawyers, but in truth, in exposure. So I turned down the producer. I said no to the movie deals for now. Instead, I started a project, quietly, behind the scenes. It was called The Hidden Letters. I launched a secure platform where people could upload documents and stories that had been hidden or withheld: acceptance letters, medical records, legal notices, emails from parents saying things they'd never admit in public. The stories poured in. A girl in Nevada whose mom shredded her art school admission because she needed help at the diner. A boy in Michigan whose uncle stole his college fund and blamed it on tax. A girl in Texas who was told she was never smart enough until she found her old IQ test results hidden in a drawer. The site went viral within 2 months. And the title? It came from my acceptance letter, the one my parents buried in a drawer like it meant nothing. One afternoon, I was sitting at my desk when I got an alert. "New submission. From Ellie Monroe." I froze. I hadn't heard from Ellie in 2 months. She'd gone quiet, and I respected that. Sometimes healing takes space. But now, here she was. I clicked. Her submission read, "They took your letter. They took mine too." I found it. "Lila, I was accepted to Parsons School of Design last year. Mom said nothing came. I just found it hidden in the sewing room drawer. I'm sorry I didn't believe you sooner. I'm applying again. This time, I'm going." I felt my heart clench and lift all at once. They did it again. To her, to my sister, they didn't just try to kill my dream. They tried to bury hers too. But this time, she had someone who knew the truth, and I wouldn't let them win. A month later, I returned to our hometown, not for revenge, but to speak. At the same auditorium where our high school graduation had been held, a fundraiser had invited me to speak about educational access. They had no idea what had gone on behind closed doors in my house, just 2 streets down. But when I took the stage, everyone found out. I didn't name names. I didn't have to. The truth was clear in every word I spoke: how a hidden letter became a hidden life, how silence almost won, how telling the truth saved me and others. The audience was still when I finished, until one person stood up: Ellie. She walked onto the stage in a soft blue dress and combat boots, and wrapped her arms around me. "I'm going to New York," she said into the mic. The crowd clapped, cheered, rose to their feet, and I cried, not because of what we lost, but because of what we finally got back. That night, I got a message request. It was from my father. "I saw your speech. You looked like your mother used to when she was proud of herself." I don't know what to say, except "I'm sorry, Dad." I didn't answer. There are some apologies that come too late, but I didn't block him either. Let him sit with it. Let him see what a dropout really became. When the event was over, I stepped outside into the crisp evening air. Ellie joined me, holding a cup of cider. "Do you ever think," she said softly, "about how different life would have been if they hadn't hidden that letter?" I looked up at the stars. "Sometimes," I admitted, "but mostly, I think about how proud I am that I opened it anyway." She smiled. "Me too." Then she looked at me. "I'm gonna frame mine, not just the acceptance, the envelope, everything." I laughed. Yeah, she nodded. "As proof that I got in? That I always belonged, even if no one told me?" We sat in silence for a while. Then I said, "Hey, Elle, yeah? I'm glad you didn't stay quiet." She looked at me with tearful eyes. "I'm glad you didn't. That was the real win. Not the applause. Not the podcast. Not even the book. It was knowing we could never be buried again. Our names, our futures, our truth. It all lived in the light now, and no one could steal it again." A year later, I watched my little sister walk across the stage at Parsons School of Design. Her shoulders were back, her eyes fierce, her lips curved into a confident smile I hadn't seen since we were kids. The crowd clapped politely, not knowing how much she had fought for that walk. But I knew. And when she stepped off the stage, cap in one hand and diploma in the other, she ran straight into my arms. "They tried," she whispered, "but they didn't win. And they never would." By then, the Hidden Letters Project had become more than just a website. It had grown into a full nonprofit. We now had legal volunteers helping students recover stolen documents, financial advisors teaching teens how to manage their college savings accounts without interference, and even partnerships with universities who agreed to send duplicate letters to alternate safe addresses in case parents tried to intercept them. I wasn't doing this alone either. Ellie joined as co-founder. She led a new initiative specifically for siblings of sabotaged students, because sometimes, she'd say at every event, one letter isn't the only thing they tried to erase. We toured high schools, community centers, even parent-teacher forums. We told our story, not with rage, not with revenge, but with resolve. Some people called us ungrateful daughters, others called us heroes, but we weren't looking for titles. We were just telling the truth. One day, I got an email from someone I never expected to hear from again. "Mrs. Patterson, my old high school counselor." Subject line: "I owe you more than you know. Lila, I've followed your work, and I wanted to reach out. I need to tell you something. Back then, when you stopped coming to school, your mother told us you had dropped out because of emotional instability. She said not to contact you, that she was handling it." I believed her. I filed the paperwork. I let it go. "I'm so sorry. If you're ever open to it, I'd love to talk. Maybe even help your foundation." I stared at the screen for a long time. Another adult who looked away when I needed her. Another silent bystander, finding her voice. I replied finally, "Miss Patterson, thank you. If you want to help, there's a school 2 blocks from here. They could use someone who listens." Lila. The irony? My mother still hadn't apologized. Not truly. She'd sent a birthday card last month, with a note that said, "Hope we can move past all this." Move past, as if betrayal had an expiration date. But I didn't need her apology. I had already healed in spite of her. Still, one more letter did arrive. This one. Unexpected, heavy, cream-colored envelope with a wax seal. It was from my grandfather. I hadn't heard from him in years. He was my mom's father, the only person in her family who had ever defended me during the early fallout. Inside was a handwritten note. "Lila, I watched your interview on PBS last night. You are the granddaughter I always knew you could be. Your parents have tried to downplay it, but I'm not blind. Also, enclosed is something I should have given you long ago. Use it however you choose. I trust your judgment more than theirs. Grandpa, Howard." There was a check inside for $25,000. I cried harder than I expected. It wasn't about the money. It was about the trust. Finally, someone in the family saying, "I see you. I believe you. I choose you." I used the check to build something Ellie and I had only dreamed about. A scholarship, but not just for grades. It was called the Unburied Dreams Grant, for students whose futures had been blocked, stolen, or silenced. We awarded the first scholarship at the next Hidden Letters Gala. The winner, a girl named Jayla. Her aunt had thrown out every college letter she received, believing Jayla should stay close and help raise her cousins. Jayla had found her University of Miami acceptance in the trash 3 weeks before classes started. She made it anyway. We gave her She stood at the podium and said, "Thank you for seeing me. My family didn't, but now I know what real family means." Ellie cried. I cried. And the room stood as one. Later that night, standing under the string lights of the rooftop garden, Ellie leaned on the railing beside me. "Do you ever wish we had different parents?" she asked softly. I thought for a second. I used to. But now, I don't know. Without them, maybe I wouldn't be this version of me. Ellie nodded. Same, I hate what they did. But I love who we became. We clinked our glasses. "To survival," I said. She smiled. "To revenge. The quiet kind." We never called it revenge out loud. But when my mom's neighbor came up to us at the grocery store and whispered, "I always wondered what happened to you," it felt like victory. When our old pastor invited me to speak at the community church after hearing my story, it felt like clarity. When my mom tried to send a new email asking for a meeting to clear the air, and I deleted it without even opening it, that felt like peace. The last time I saw my parents in person was at Ryan's wedding. Yes, my brother. He had spent a long time unpacking everything he hadn't seen, hadn't heard, hadn't believed. But eventually he came around. He apologized in person, multiple times. He didn't make excuses. He didn't minimize it. He asked me to walk him down the aisle. Because he said, "You're the one who taught me what real family means." So I did. And when I walked into that chapel, dress swaying, holding his arm, my mother turned to look. Her face tightened. Her lips pursed, her hand gripped my father's tighter, but she didn't say a word. She didn't have to. She had already lost the narrative, and I wasn't her scapegoat anymore. I was my own person, whole, free, and finally, seen. So when people ask me how I managed to forgive them, I always say the same thing. I did. Some people don't earn forgiveness. Some people don't even ask for it. But you can still move forward, still write your own story, still win, because being buried isn't the end, not when you know how to